Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My guest today is Javier Hernandez. He's a Puerto Rican author, writer, linguist, and an advocate for Puerto Rico's sovereignty. He's the author of a book called PREXIT, Forging Puerto Rico's Path to Sovereignty. So welcome, Javier. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. I really appreciate the opportunity and speak with everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, tell me a bit about your background and then when did it catch in your mind that Puerto Rico should be more than what it is in relation to the U.S.?
Great question. So I was born in Puerto Rico, but then when I was 4, my parents moved to the U.S. So I would say I was raised in the U.S. pretty much my entire life. I went to kindergarten all the way up to college, as you can imagine. That. So, I went to, American schools my entire life, and not in Puerto Rico. And something interesting was being a Puerto Rican in American schools, you learn to love freedom. George Washington, Jefferson, freedom, independence. Like you hear these concepts as a child, and you aspire. You want to do that. But when I was a child, I still wasn't really cognizant or conscious of Puerto Rico in that way yet. I was too little. For me, Puerto Rico was just the place where my relatives live, and that was it. Then I would say when I get to high school was when I got a little more, you would say, consciousness about Puerto Rico and what's going on, the history. And then when I read Puerto Rican history, that was the eye opener for me. I was like, what? I never knew all these things happen, and were kind of like kept from me, from my family. Like no one talked about it, no one discusses it. And then when you learn it, the invasion, the persecution, the banning of the flags, this crazy history that no one just wants to talk about. But when you learn it, it's actually really, really incredible. And that was eye-opening for me. And being raised in the U.S. as a Puerto Rican, I realized, and this is just my own personal experience. I can't say other people, this happens to them or they think this way. Maybe some do, some don't. But I realized early on that I'm Puerto Rican. I could never be an American. Even if I wanted to, even if I pretended to, I speak English, even if I knew American history, I was never going to be considered an American. And I understood that. And that was fine. That was cool. Like, okay, I'm Puerto Rican. We'll move on.
Well, do you have, being born in Puerto Rico, do you have American citizenship or do you have to go through some rigmarole altogether?
No, Puerto Ricans since 1917 are born citizens.
Okay, well, that's at least.
Yeah, so we have that. But then even knowing that, like, if you just know that, it sounds okay, cool. But then when you read the history about how we got citizenship, it's actually crazy because in 1914, a few years before 1917, the Puerto Rican House of Delegates, democratically elected, didn't want it. We're like, no, we're good. We don't want U.S. citizenship. We don't need it. We just want to be Puerto Ricans. But the U.S. Congress imposed it anyways. Even though we didn't want it, we still got it. And then a week later, we got drafted to World War I.
Look, also too, because you're a citizen of the U.S., you are attacked, as a U.S. citizen wherever you go, wherever you live. I know there's carve-outs for like entrepreneurs and stuff like that. But, that's also another issue that I don't know if anyone talks about. Like U.S. citizen, you can live wherever you want. Unless you renounce it, you got to pay taxes and stuff, at least something.
Yes, that the U.S. is one of the few countries where an American citizen, no matter where you live, or even, for example, if let's say you live in France for 20 years and you have a family there, you have your life there, you still have to pay taxes to the IRS, even though you have yeah. And I think there's like one other country in the world that does that. Usually,
Yeah, like Eritrea or Ethiopia or something. That's some crazy.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just Eritrea and the U.S. Not the only ones that do that. Every other country, if you live somewhere else, you don't have to pay taxes unless you live in the country. Yeah. But as Puerto Ricans, we have to, put up with all these issues and situations that we had no say in, we had no vote in, nothing. It was just, you were made citizens and we're supposed to be ecstatically happy about that and move on, which, has its benefits, of course, to travel, all that. But if we were independent, we would have our own citizenship, our own passports. We could still travel around the world. We could do stuff. Yeah. So there's that.
Are there any or many military bases on Puerto Rico that the U.S. has established, or no?
Yeah, in the past, there were a lot more. There were Ramey Air Force Base, there was Roosevelt Roads, and still today, there's Fort Buchanan in the San Juan metro area, and I think there's also Fort Allen. It's like a little one in the south, Fort Allen. So they're still there. The largest one, Roosevelt Roads, closed down years ago. Ramey Air Force Base closed down, and now it's an international airport. It's been given back to Puerto Rico. We're developing it. But there are still little, military installations, little offices here and there. But the big base, I would say, would be Fort Buchanan in Metro San Juan area. That's still there. And that was like 1920s. The U.S. obtained that, and they're still there. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of like Hawaii. Hawaii doesn't seem to really want to be part of the U.S. And I've been there, and it seems to like its differences and its own culture and its own things, which is fine. Hey, I didn't realize Puerto Rico is the same.
Yeah, and Hawaii was even a little different. That they were a sovereign nation. They were a kingdom with diplomacy and like a sovereign nation. And they were a coup d'etat, and they were taken over by force. Yeah. Well, with Puerto Rico, we were a Spanish colony, and then a few months before the U.S. invaded, we were finally given autonomy. Like we had like legit, real autonomy with Spain. And ironically, we had more when we had the autonomy. It lasted a few months. That time. During that time, we had more freedom, economic, political freedom, and civil rights under Spain than we do right now with the U.S. And that's crazy to think that, because Puerto Rico under Spain, the last few months, we could trade with foreign nations. We had our own like a parliament and everything. And then as soon as the U.S. invaded and came in, they closed everything down. They we had a currency, devalued our currency, then abolished it, made us poor. We had a parliament, disbanded, gone, disappeared, and it was replaced by a Council of Americans. Okay. So yeah, and that's some of the really harsh history that many Puerto Ricans to this day still don't know, because you're not in Puerto Rican schools. They don't talk about this.
Oh, how is it presented? Like how are you spoken to? You guys are citizens of the U.S. Like how are you spoken to and treated?
Yeah. So the schools in Puerto Rico have a colonial curriculum. It's very, very colonial. My parents and grandparents went through the same colonial system. And basically, the long and short of it is Spain was evil. The U.S. came in and saved us, and now we're happy. That's it. That's the nuts and bolts of Puerto Rican history. When you learn it in Puerto Rico, in the Department of Education, which has a colonial, and they just make you feel that you're nothing. It's like the U.S. is so huge and beautiful and large and bountiful, and we're just a little bit of nothing. Like they just keep saying that over for decades and decades, and then you have people who really and sadly believe that they're inferior. Like they really believe that without the U.S. we would die of hunger or something. But that's kind of ingrained. It's been taught to people that you're not born with that. It's been told, and you have your grandparents repeat the same message of, if we're free, we die. Type of mentality. And it's that. And then when you learn Puerto Rican history, the real history of persecutions and all the stuff that I'm telling you right now, people are amazed. They're like, what? I never knew that. And are totally in shock when they learn just basic regular Puerto Rican history is shocking because it's withheld for many people.
Yeah, I'd have to say anytime I thought of Puerto Rico, I'm like, okay, they're I don't even know what you call it. Is Puerto Rico a protectorate of the U.S. or what is it legally called?
Yeah, legally it's called a Commonwealth, but technically it's a colony. It's just a plain out colony that the U.S. doesn't like to call it, that says that it has colonies. It's embarrassing to say that, the U.S. being democratic and it fought colonialism for its own independence. So, but you want to have colonies, but not call them colonies. So they call them Commonwealth, overseas territories. The preferred U.S. legalistic term is non-incorporated territory, but it's a colony. Basically, I like to use the situation. Imagine this. Imagine if I was an abolitionist, right? But I had a slave. But you come to my house for dinner, and then you realize that I have a slave. Would you say something? Of course, right? You'd be like, "Hey, dude, you can't have a slave." And you'd mention that, right? You'd bring that up, huh? But then I'm like, no, that's not a slave. That's my non-paid permanent employee. I just give it some other
by non-paid, unwilling, permanent employee.
Exactly, and that's fine. That's not a slave. That's just that. So I just changed the name and pretend it's okay. No, you have a colony that you like to call a non-incorporated territory. It's a colony in all, but we in Puerto Rico, we call it colony. The UN calls it colony. The world calls it colony, except American politicians. They can't come to terms with saying that, so they'll come up with all these fanciful terms because they can't say it. It's like you can't say the C word. You can't say it because it's embarrassing, to talk about freedom all over the world and then you have a colony. It's embarrassing. So they don't say the C word. They'll just say that, our fellow Americans. That's another one. When they say our fellow Americans, no, we're not your fellow Americans. We're Puerto Ricans. Just because you made us citizens doesn't mean that now we become you, and that's the thing. Like, it's really, it's convoluted and complicated. There's a lot of history and passion and emotion with all this. But then again, but like I tell people, I'm not an American, but I'm a U.S. citizen, but I would never consider myself an American. I'm Puerto Rican. And that's okay. I mean, I respect you. If you're an American, great. I would love to be your friend and I respect you and your culture. But why expect me to try to pretend to be you? Like to pretend you? I mean, as if my culture wasn't good enough to aspire to and that I love, you see? So, for example, if tomorrow France invaded Puerto Rico, took it over, and made us French citizens, does that make me French? No, of course not. And kind of that's the same situation.
I got you. Okay. Did you start the PREXIT movement or who did? And when and why did it start now?
Yeah, the independence it's historic. I mean, it's like from the 1800s, but the PREXIT movement, that just started kind of like when I published that book, the PREXIT, Forging Puerto Rico's Path to Sovereignty. And yeah, I coined it like when Brexit, the real Brexit happened, I remember I instantly thought PREXIT. Yeah. And then I thought that was really like a cool little word, like a little term. And then a few years later, then I published the book for that. And basically the book establishes, it goes a little bit history, some historical stuff that people may not know. I talk a little bit about that, but then not just describe history and leave it at that. I then propose independence, but with a plan, actual proposals, not just like, oh, we should be free and leave it at that. I mean, that should just be enough. But many people want like more information. So I provide possible economic solutions, political, how could our republic look like? And those are issues that many people don't discuss, or when you discuss it, it's like eye-opening, like, oh, we can have a republic. Should we have a president or a prime minister? Yeah, those are questions that people start, when you have people start talking about that, that's amazing. Because then you start,
when you talk to people, are most people like, why do you care? We're fine. Are they just living their lives? Or is there a big component of people that are really taken by the idea?
Many are taken by the idea. I mean, again, you will find people that are like, hey, leave me alone. I'm fine, whatever. But you do have people who are very like, especially older people. In Puerto Rico, this is almost generational. Older people who went through a lot of the persecution, 50s and 60s and 70s. I mean, they remember how really hard it was to be pro-independence. I mean, you could disappear, you could get killed, crazy stuff, you'd lose your job. So there was a, like a, shh, don't talk about that type of mentality. Now the young generation or young professional people have never gone through that. So they're more aware of the world, aware of Singapore, of other countries, and they're not scared of freedom. And many people sadly are in Puerto Rico, where the second you say, hey, we should be free, the first thing that comes into their mind is, no, we can't. We're too small. No, we can't.
Well, how small is it? I mean, what's the population?
Well, populations of now about 3.2 million. It used to be 3.5. There's been population decrease, but population.
Is there a diaspora? How big is the diaspora one in the U.S.?
Oh, diaspora is almost 6 million. There are more Puerto Ricans outside of Puerto Rico than in Puerto Rico. Our diaspora is huge. It's a huge diaspora. Yeah, it's huge. Amazing.
What would happen if you clicked your fingers and Puerto Rico became a U.S. state? What would be different? What would you get? Full rights, less rights? What do you think would happen?
I would say a lot of political nationalism and infighting and conflict, because many people, I mean, in the last plebiscite that happened in 2024, last year, 43%, okay, well, we're getting close to 50, right? We're 43, supported sovereignty. So those are people that are like, no, we want our freedom. And so if we became a state, I mean, you're going to have a state where almost half the population wants freedom. Does not want annexation, does not want to assimilate, does not want to speak English only. And those are big issues that many, like the statehood movement in Puerto Rico, when they talk about statehood, they talk about it only for money. It's only an economic thing. It's only, hey, let's become a state so we can get more welfare, more food stamps from these gringos.
What other benefits might you get if Puerto Rico became a state?
It's just economic. It's just more dependency money, more food stamps. That's their selling point.
Do you have more of a burden? Like Puerto Ricans, with the tax free?
Yeah, the taxes would go up because now we don't pay federal taxes, but then as a state we would. And the tax burden, the federal tax burden, plus the Puerto Rico tax burden would literally destroy the Puerto Rican economy. In 2014, there was a Government Accountability Office report about that. And it literally said that if Puerto Rico became a state, it would destroy the Puerto Rican economy, just the taxes, right? It would increase federal spending to Puerto Rico, but then Puerto Rico itself, the economy would crumble because of this huge tax burden, plus the dependency. I mean, it'll be chaos, literally. I mean, this is not from me. It's from the Congress office has said this. But still, even with that report, the pro-statehood people in Puerto Rico are just like, forget that, whatever. Hey, let's just ignore that, and are just focusing on, hey, let's get more money, more money. But what about assimilation? What about being a state? I mean, when you become an American, you're a state, you want to be part of the U.S. family. No, that's, we'll still speak Spanish. We'll still have an Olympic team. I'm like, no, you don't. Does Texas have an Olympic team? Does Florida have No, they don't. New Jersey, no. So, but these stateholders really think that Puerto Rico will become a state and will still be Spanish speaking. We'll have an Olympic team, totally fanciful stuff that doesn't exist. But that's the version of statehood they sell in Puerto Rico. Because if they were to come out and tell the truth, no, sorry guys, we would not have an Olympic team. We would have to all be with Team USA. They would lose a lot of people, a lot of supporters. And that's literally what told them. Yeah. And Puerto Rico right now doesn't have an Olympic team. And we're proud of our people, our athletes. And believe me, whenever Puerto Rico is anything, it could be chess, it could be badminton, anything with USA, it gets really passionate in Puerto Rico. Like we're like, Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico can win, yeah.
Okay. What would be the stages in order for Puerto Rico to be independent? Like how many signatures on a petition? Like what would be needed?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've tried to get that answer from Congress for 126 years and still no one said anything. A lot of times, there have been a lot of bills that just appear out of nowhere, but have never been approved in Congress. They just kind of disappear and nothing happens. So we really don't know. The only thing was at the end of it was like 1989, 1991. That was the last time Congress seriously debated like the status issue. Like what would happen if this happened? And with independence, they literally said that, yeah, we would support it. There would be a transition plan. We'd do some economic aid to help you become a republic. And then we'd probably establish some, trade relationships, diplomatic relationships. Sounds good. The problem was statehood. Many Republicans and even some Democrats back in the early 90s did not want statehood, and they don't. And that's always been the poison pill. Every status plebiscite that happens in Puerto Rico already built in Congress, the minute statehood is added, it's dead. It dies because it has no future in Congress. The American people don't want it. I mean, if Puerto Rico become a state, imagine this. We have a larger population than many states. Like Nebraska, Kansas, we are larger than them. If we became a state, we would take away their congressional representatives because the Congress has to stay at 435. So when they do an apportionment, let's say Kansas has 3 reps, maybe now the next year they'll have 2, or 1, whatever. So just that in and of itself, will make many other states be like, no, we cannot have Puerto Rico state for that reason, for those political reasons.
I see. That makes sense. But so you said like 43% appear to approve. When, like what would be needed to force a vote to see?
So recently, one of the things that we're pushing, because we've had many plebiscites and statehood always somehow wins. I mean, and that's a whole other conversation because they manipulate the votes because they control the electoral commission. That's a whole thing. But even when they say they win, they're all ignored. Congress always ignores all the plebiscites. Okay, so seeing that for the past few decades, that's what happens. A group of Puerto Rico called Plan B Independencia basically came up with the idea of, let's go, instead of asking Congress what to do next, because they just keep ignoring Puerto Rico, let's go straight to the executive branch. Because the president has the executive power. So he can literally just take an executive order and can sign Puerto Rico and support independence and basically start that process. Congress would lend support, especially if the Republicans control Congress, and if Trump is saying, hey, this is what I want, make it happen, it could happen. So there was a draft executive order that we helped write. It's circulated in Congress. It created a huge media storm and panic in Puerto Rico. It was a media storm, but the panic was really more with the pro-statehood party because they for many years have just isolated everyone who isn't pro-statehood out of Washington, D.C. Now they can't. Now we're independentistas. We're also in Washington. We're talking to congressmen, senators, and now they're in panic because we're actually being heard. They're actually opening the doors for us. We're having meetings.
What would happen though? I mean, it doesn't seem like anything major would happen. And I guess, geopolitical security, they could say to Puerto Rico, like, you'll have an obligation to align with us militarily. I mean, they could set terms. I guess it would be like release terms, and they would probably try to extract a heavy price for your release, unfortunately,
And if that were this case, that would all be on the negotiation. We would love to be in a situation where we're sitting down with the American delegation and negotiate and like an exit, PREXIT strategy, if you could call it that. It's our way to leave, but we want to leave, but on good terms, not, like squabbling, yelling type of situation. Have a really nice, all right, this isn't working. Let's transition to independence, yet also be a U.S. ally, trade partner, strategic partner in the Caribbean. We can make that happen. We have a lot of interests in common. Some things we may not agree on, and that's okay.
What does the U.S. get out of having Puerto Rico? I mean, what's the benefit?
It's bragging rights. Hey, look what we control in the Caribbean, bragging rights. There's that. And there's also, because they control our economy, we're a closed captive market. So we can really only buy American products, or we can only use American boats. Kind of like it's called with the Jones Act of 1920 that forces Puerto Rico to use the American merchant fleet, which is expensive in the world, We're not allowed to create our own fleet or rent a foreign fleet that's just cheaper. We have to use the American fleet, which is expensive and increases our imports, but then it benefits some American maritime companies, and they have lobbyists and they benefit from it. So there are groups and people that benefit from our servitude, and they want nothing to change because they're making money off of it. But I mean, we're here to. I mean, I would love to negotiate with them and sit down with them and like, okay, we can all benefit. You know, we can make this a win-win for everyone. But in order for Puerto Rico to prosper in the future, we need our freedom. We need sovereignty to control our economy, our diplomacy, our borders. Right now, we control our borders. Nothing. We control nothing. It's a colony. You know, so we need to control our own nation. And at the same,
I think what will happen is that at some point in the future, this is likely to happen, this separation, but it's going to be a heavy set of penalties, and they're going to still the U.S. is still undoubtedly going to want to control Puerto Rico. So you may separate, but they're going to have some options to you, and I can't guess they would, because, you know, the area that surrounds Puerto Rico is close to the U.S., very valuable, you know, so they want to control it.
No, and I'm sure there would be some, you know, pressure to be, you know, help support U.S. causes overseas. Fine. When we get to that, we'll get to that. Okay. But I mean, and if that's the price, hey, I would pay that, because at least we're free. At least we could be at the UN. We can discuss these issues. We can help each other out internationally. And we can help support our economies. I mean, Puerto Rico would still buy American products. We wouldn't just be like, we never want to have any more American products again. No, we would, you know, further facilitate more trade. But we'd finally have the power to improve our economy. Right now, we have a colonial dependent economy based off federal funds, based off begging for federal funds. We don't produce, not because we can't, because we're not allowed to produce.
What would be the biggest crops that Puerto Rico produce?
Oh, well, I mean, in terms of agriculture, there's so many tropical, there's coffee, cacao, things that we can produce ourselves that grow in Puerto Rico, very good. There's so many other crops. I would even include crops that people may not even be aware of too much, industrial hemp, that would grow, that would have like 3 or 4 seasons in Puerto Rico. And that's a national export crop. There's those, but then not just that, but then there's also manufacturing. We can invite foreign firms and American firms to come to Puerto Rico, joint ventures, all that, plus international trade. We can finally get Puerto Rican companies up and running and to expand in trade. Because right now, remember, as a colony, we're closed to international trade. With independence, we could finally access global markets and improve our products, do export and all these other things. I mean, things that for the U.S. is normal stuff. But for us, it would be finally the first time we can have global trade. Great. You know, we can finally control our customs. We can put tariffs on goods, and we can have tariff waivers. We can have tariff treaties with the U.S. and other countries. I mean, there's so much potential. So in the book, PREXIT, and that I published, and then other ones, the one that came after that was Puerto Rico, the Economic Case for Sovereignty. That one goes more in depth about independence and the economy. There's so many proposals and so many revenue streams that a Puerto Rican Republic would have access to, that we could really grow our economy. I mean, just with the customs, taxes, foreign corporate taxation, things that other countries already do. If we did them, they would really support our economic growth, our treaties with the U.S. We could have a free trade agreement with the U.S., special arrangements. I mean, there's so much that we can do. But again, we can have all this amazingness in paper, but it means nothing if we don't have our freedom. So we don't have our sovereignty. Once we have our sovereignty, then we can finally implement all these plans, all these proposals, all these ideas to generate income so that we don't have to be dependent on the U.S. And that's the goal. We see the pro-statehood folks are all about dependence. They just want more, and I apologize for using, but this is how they refer to Americans. They want more gringo money. That's literally how they say it in Puerto Rico. They wouldn't say that to you. They would see when the stateholders talk to an Americans, they have this whole narrative or set up. Oh, we're fellow Americans. We're just like you. They kind of try to give you the warm and fuzzies that we're also all Americans. But in Puerto Rico, when you're not there, when they're talking to amongst Puerto Ricans, it's all about ka-ching, 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 money, money, money.
All that money.
Yeah. They would never say that to you. But
Or like Haiti and other places and Jamaica. I mean, what a freaking mess. And yeah, there's been all kinds of nations trying to control them too. So I understand what you mean. I mean, what are you making any headway? Like how, that was the situation been for so long. Like what's happening?
well, the fact that 43% just voted in the past election, even with all the fraud that happened, still we got 43%. That's a victory. That's amazing, because back when persecution and repression was really, really rough, we would get 2 to 3%. And since that's kind of leveled off, since like, I would say like the 2000s onward, it hasn't been as bad as it used to be. And then you have more people like millennials, younger people who were raised in Puerto Rico or raised in the diaspora, who have a different vision of the world. That they've traveled, they've seen other countries. They don't buy into the, well, we're little, we can't do it, mentality. Yeah. So that's why we have a lot of young people, and then who support independence and professionals. And then when 2028 comes around, if there's going to be another plebiscite, it's going to increase, because there were a lot of young people that supported independence, but were too young to vote in 2024. But they'll be able to. And whenever they do polls at the high schools in Puerto Rico and the colleges, it's like 70-80% support independence. It's amazing. So
who's really behind this effort? Who are the champions of it?
Well, there's the Independence Party in Puerto Rico, and that party is historic. It was founded like in the late 40s, and they were the second party in power before, like in the 50s. But again, from the 50s onward, there was a lot of repression. There was a gag law that repressed independence movement. Our flag was illegal. You couldn't even say the word independence, or you get arrested. If the government saw you with the flag, you'd get 10 years in prison. 10 years in prison for having the Puerto Rico flag in Puerto Rico. So imagine growing up in that era. Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard. So that political party just survived. They just battled and survived. They really couldn't grow because with all the repression going on. Now, fast forward to the late 90s, 2000s, and finally they start growing. Slowly growing. In 2020, I believe they were 14%, and now in 2024 elections, the candidate for governor of the Independence Party did an alliance with other parties, and he got 33%, which came in second place, right on the heels of the pro-statehood lady who won, Jennifer Gonzalez. But that wasn't heard of. That's new. Because usually in historical record, the independence candidate was always the third came in third place. Now he came in second place, and with right on the heels of being elected. So that was a big deal. So there is change happening in Puerto Rico, and there's some change that's happening that many powers that be in Puerto Rico do not want to happen. So there's even talk. Sometimes on podcasts in Puerto Rico, some pro-stateholders are even talking about, and they talk about this as if it's nothing, as if it's like, fooling around, that, it may be time to bring back the persecution again. Like they literally said that on the podcast. Like it could be time to bring back some, assassinations here and there, because, to scare people to submission. They've said that, and it's straight. And remember, those are the ones that are pro-US, that they say that they're pro-USA. Exactly.
Interesting.
Yep.
So when will be the next big event that happens with the Soul campaign, do you think?
Well, right now there's a lot of education going on. The independence candidate, no, he didn't make it, but he's still, going around and interviews and education and events. But there is, again, other groups like this other group that I'm part of called Plan B Independencia. And we're backing this whole notion, this idea of having an executive order, having Trump sign an executive order to start this up. He's already signed so many executive orders that are even more outlandish than this would Exactly. So if you just, hey, Trump, if you just sign this, sign right here, we can
Save the, what if we change the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, be Gulf of Puerto Rico?
not.
That,
But yeah, I mean, look, right now the U.S. spends $40 billion on Puerto Rico to keep it as is, a poor dependent colony. $40 billion that could go to your state, your county, right? If Puerto Rico became a state, that would go up. The federal spending to Puerto Rico would be over $50 billion, right? And a lot of that money would be to maintain, food stamps, dependency, all that, right? Keep Puerto Rico poor because that's how it works for them. Now, if the U.S. decided for independence, the U.S. in the long term would save, all right, hear this, save over $617 billion, right? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of, so it's in the U.S. economic interest, not even morally. Forget, even if you don't want to deal with morals. Politically and economically, it's in the U.S. interest to support independence, to move it forward. But working on that, we're trying to contact, members of Congress, American politicians. And, we're trying, we're doing our part.
yeah, that was a very interesting story. I didn't realize almost any of this. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. And Rich, you're not alone. You're not alone. Most Americans, even highly educated Americans who have like 2 or 3 doctorates, do not know this information. It's not talked about in American media. It doesn't, it's kind of like, you don't talk about Bruno, you don't talk about Puerto Rico. It's not. Yeah. I remember even in high school, when I was in New Jersey in high school, in U.S. history class, when I brought up, in a very respectful, I wasn't being rude, in a very respectful way, the Ponce massacre in Puerto Rico in 1937, I got kicked out of the classroom because how dare I insinuate that the U.S. would do a massacre in Puerto Rico?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The teacher could believe, because he's never heard of that. And then I brought in a picture of the Ponce massacre, and he was like, oh, I did not know that happened. Yeah, that's normal. I see that all the time.
Crazy. Wow. So, is the climate, you think, in Puerto Rico just slowly edging towards enough of a vote? Whether it's going to happen in the next 5 years, or is it a long term coming, or are you trying to put your foot on the gas right now? Like, what's happening?
I mean, if it happens now, I'll be for it. With this idea about the executive order, we've gotten a lot of pushback in Puerto Rico from the pro-statehood and pro-Commonwealth folks that are like, oh, that's not democratic. We have to have the democratic will of the Puerto Rican people to decide what happens. But my take is, did the U.S. ask us to invade us? Did they ask us? Was there a vote? No. When they imposed all these laws for 125 years, was there a vote? No. No. They don't ask permission, right? But then when we want freedom, now we have to ask permission. So I'm all democracy. I'm all for democracy. But when it comes to decolonization, I don't have to convince, especially after 125 years or 126 years of repression and not caring about our opinions. If I can convince the U.S. to let us go, great, we did it.
What are the arguments of the people against it? Like, besides we just like it how it is there, what would be the downside? Is there any?
It's fear. All they talk about when it comes to independence is they don't even want to debate what kind of government we would have or the economy. Basically, for these people, it's independence equals death, equals poverty. Independence is bad. So imagine growing up thinking that independence is evil. Then what are you going to expect? Now, here's the irony. I grew up in the U.S. where independence is loved. Being independent, freedom. I grew up that all my American...
Depends what you're independent from, yeah.
Exactly. And then all my American neighbors, they're all pro-independence for the U.S. Republicans and Democrats are all pro-independence. No, I've never met an American that was pro having the U.S. become a colony again. That doesn't exist anymore, But imagine how you would react, Rich, if you had a loyalist, right? Come back from the past, an American loyalist that was pro-British, and try to convince you that it's better to be under British rule. Like,
you laugh. You'd be believable. There are people that are doing that, actually. It's called like the the World Economic Forum or the WA, but those are the globalists that want to enslave everybody. Yeah, there actually are, but
Yeah. In Puerto Rico, we're still dealing with that. We're still dealing with loyalists that believe that we can't be free because we're too dumb or we're too ethnic or whatever. They come up with crazy reasons. First, we're too small, right? That was the big one back in the day. Or we're too small to be free. But then you have Singapore, Dubai, all these real little countries that are super rich. So then they lost that, they can't use that anymore. You're too small to be free. So now they came up with culture. Oh, the Puerto Rican people can't do. So you see, so they try to come up with different ways to justify our colonial rule, or colonialism. And I have to keep fighting against that. I keep saying, like, we can be free. We can be a free people in the world. Just like, there's 193 countries in the world. We can get one more. Or maybe 2 or 3 more, because there's other countries that want to be free also. But yeah, I mean, we're a nation. We're a total nationality. We're different people. We have our own history, literature, the way we speak or the way we think. We're a nation. We just don't have political sovereignty over our own country yet. And that's what we're trying to push. We're trying to make this happen. And I mean, and there are people doing a really good job of this in Puerto Rico now. But I see my role as help to convince Americans, who many have never heard of these issues. Yet, if Puerto Rico becomes a state, it will be really bad. It's not going to be, oh, we have a Latino state. No, this is going to be Quebec times 100. All right, because Quebec has its issues with Canada, the culture, the language. All right, we would come in hot with, we're not speaking English. We will never assimilate. And we have a vibrant and powerful independence movement coming in like that. Is that a place you want to be part of a state? No, of course not. I mean, that doesn't seem like people that want to be American, So, and not because being American is bad. It's not. It's just we're not American. I'm not French. I'm not German either. I'm not Italian. I'm Puerto Rican. So it's, we want our freedom so that we can finally have a great relationship with the U.S., one equal, like friend to friend cooperation, not one based off who rules who, and that's.
Who is behind, I don't know if it's called Rule 60 or whatever, huge tax breaks to Americans that form corporations there and all that. Like, do you think that, does that go contra to the wishes of people that wish to separate? Does it kind of tie you together even more with the U.S.?
The irony is that those laws were made, like, to attract rich Americans to Puerto Rico. Okay,
It's like a recolonization then, because if you get enough Americans to live in Puerto Rico, they're gonna be like, "Oh, we like it here. We don't want it to be separate."
That's the idea. That's why it was done by a pro-statehood governor, Luis Fortuño, who kind of started that, bring Americans in. But what's happened is it hasn't been like a drove. It hasn't been like, oh crap, now we have 50,000 Americans here. No, it's been just a few rich people with their families or something without their families. But many of them have left because they realized, because they were sold this is the USA. It's a tropical version of the USA. That's what they sell you, right? When you live in Puerto Rico for real, you realize, whoa, I'm in Latin America here. This is all is in Spanish, and people don't see me as a person. Yeah. So many have left, but you still have some people that are there. And I get it. Look, you investing, that's a whole different issue. But the way that they did it, the way that they just, because these Americans are coming in getting tax breaks that Puerto Ricans can't get. See, that's what makes it unfair. If there were tax breaks that anyone can get, great. Okay, yeah, we can make that work because anyone. But imagine it was like a tax break only for these people who you're bringing in to try to displace us demographically. What the hell is that? Imagine if the U.S. was doing that or something like that, like bringing on purpose all these people to demographically change and whatever, and you just have to sit back and let it happen. People get sit there, things are happening like that already. But so in Puerto Rico, you do have those situations. Now, I personally know some Americans in Puerto Rico who are amazing people, who aren't some of these like Act 60 people who are, many of them are disliked, not because really they're investors, it's because the way they act. Like they come to Puerto Rico and they don't learn the language. They treat Puerto Ricans like crap. In our own country, these people come in and treat us like crap. So you have that, but you also have a lot of different Americans who are amazing people, great. They're in the community. They actually contribute, respect our culture, respect our learning Spanish. So those Americans, awesome. We love you. You're great. We just don't want the Americans that are come in and start, treating us like literally treating us like immigrants in our own country. That's literally
The only complaint I have is the Puerto Rican Spanish is so fast it's hard to understand it, and they cut the word. Right? Mexican Spanish easy.
No, yeah. See, that's the funny that we all have different Spanish and different, and yes, it is fast. And I recognize even when I speak Spanish, it's fast. But if you think ours is fast, Chilean Spanish is light speed. Some people can't even understand it. Yeah. I love Chileans, but sometimes when I have my Chilean friends are talking, I'm like, what? Can you repeat that a little slower, man?
Yeah, it's funny. Well, very good. You made a great case for it, and I haven't heard any of this. This is a great interview. What's the best way for people to follow up with you from here?
Yeah, the best way to reach me, and I'm really on my socials. I'm on Facebook, but really that's more like, friends and family type of stuff. But really on X, on Twitter, or now called X, it's at PREXIT book. That's the best way to get me right there. If anyone's interested, they can get there's links for the books. You want to DM me something, message, or what do you think about this, or how about that? Any questions, please. I love getting questions. I answer people back. I mean, I don't just like look at it and like ignore it. I literally answer people back. If you DM me like a good question or something like that, I will respond to you back. Yeah, and like I said, I'm all about educating people. I want people to know about this. And this matters to the U.S. This can impact. If Puerto Rico becomes a state, it literally majorly impact the future of this country. It's not going to be like, oh, it's like a Miami. No. This is going to be Quebec times out. It's going to be like a Caribbean Kosovo. Okay, it's going to be different. And because we're not coming in, holding American flags and I want apple pie. No, we're not. And that's what I want Americans to understand that. So thus, the best way to deal